Admiral Kethra's crystal body shimmered with pain as he watched his flagship's bridge crack around him. The bioplasma had eaten through their strongest shields like they were made of paper. Outside the viewport, his once mighty fleet was nothing but glowing debris scattered across the darkness of space. "Admiral, the crystal heart is gone," reported his communications officer, her voice barely a whisper. Captain Zelnara went down with all hands. Kethra closed his ancient eyes. The crystal heart had been the pride of their civilization for 3,000 years. Now it was just another meal for the Devourers. These monsters had slept in the void between galaxies for so long that most species thought they were just legends, old stories told to frighten children. But the legends were real, and they were hungry. "How many ships do we have left?" he asked, though he already knew the answer would break what remained of his crystalline heart. 17, sir. Out of 2,000. The Devourers had awakened 6 months ago. Nobody knew why. Their massive hive ships, each one the size of a small moon, had simply appeared at the edge of known space and begun their feast. They consumed everything: planets, moons, even entire star systems. The matter they devoured somehow became part of their ships, making them larger and more powerful with each victory. "Send the emergency signal to all remaining worlds," Kethra ordered. "Tell them the Zephyrian Empire has fallen. Tell them the Devourers are real, and they're coming for everyone." The distress signal shot out across the galaxy at faster-than-light speed, joining thousands of others that had been broadcast over the past months. The Mindari Collective had been the first to fall. Their telepathic network, which had connected billions of minds across hundreds of worlds, went silent in a single day. The proud Thoraxian warriors lasted a bit longer, but their honor-bound fighting style was useless against an enemy that didn't care about fair combat. Light years away from the dying crystal ships, Captain Jin sat in the quiet monitoring room of Lunar Base. The small facility was hidden on the dark side of Earth's moon, where it constantly listened to signals from across the galaxy. Jin had been on duty for 16 hours straight, but he couldn't leave his post. Not today. Not with what was happening out there. "Captain, we're getting another wave of distress calls," said Lieutenant Yu, her young face pale in the blue glow of the screens. "This time it's from the Zephyrian sectors. Their entire fleet just got wiped out." Jin rubbed his tired eyes and looked at the display. Red warning lights covered most of the galactic map now. Each light represented a world that had gone silent, consumed by the Devourers. The pattern was clear. They were working their way through the galaxy systematically, eating the most advanced civilizations first. "Sir, we've also got refugee ships requesting asylum," Yu continued. 3 different species are asking permission to enter our space. They're saying Earth is their last hope." "What are our orders regarding refugees?" asked Sergeant Min from his station near the door. Jin pulled up the classified directive on his screen. The words were clear, even if he didn't like them. "All communication with external species is forbidden until further notice. We maintain radio silence and continue monitoring only." "But sir," Yu protested, "these people are dying out there. We have the technology to help them. Our ships, our weapons, we could make a difference." "Those are our orders, Lieutenant," Jin said firmly, though inside he felt the same frustration. "Earth Command has their reasons. What you and the others didn't know was that Earth had been preparing for this day for over 50 years. Hidden deep in classified files were reports from human exploration ships that had discovered ancient battlefields at the galaxy's edge. Dead. Worlds stripped bare, with only strange energy signatures left behind. Human scientists had studied those signatures and figured out what they meant long before the Devourers actually returned. "Captain, I'm getting a personal message from Commander Veltar of the Thoraxian refugees," Yu reported. He's not happy with us." Jin sighed. "Put it through." The voice that came through the speakers was filled with anger and desperation. "Humans, we know you can hear us. Your ships have been spotted in our territory. You have faster-than-light travel. You have weapons. You have technology that could save millions of lives. Why do you stay silent while the galaxy burns? Are you cowards? Are you waiting for us all to die so you can claim our empty worlds?" The message cut off, leaving the monitoring room in heavy silence. Jin could see the pain in Yu's eyes. She was young, only 23, and this was her first assignment off Earth. She still believed that doing the right thing was always simple. "He's wrong about us being cowards," Min said quietly. "Is he?" Yu asked. "We could send help. We could save those people." Jin stood up and walked to the big viewport that showed Earth floating in the distance. The blue and green world looked so peaceful, so untouched by the horror spreading across the galaxy. But he knew that appearance was deceiving. Deep beneath Earth's surface, in hidden bunkers and secret facilities, humanity was working around the clock. They were building weapons, training soldiers, and developing strategies that no other species would think of. "Sometimes," Jin said softly, "the bravest thing you can do is wait for the right moment to act." 3 months had passed since the Devourers first emerged from the void, and the galaxy was dying. Refugee ships crowded into the few remaining safe zones like wounded animals seeking shelter. Most of these vessels were barely holding together, their hulls scarred by bioplasma burns, and their crews running on fumes and desperation. Commander Veltar paced the cramped bridge of his damaged cruiser, the Iron Fang. Once, he had commanded a fleet of 300 Thoraxian warships. Now he had 17 vessels filled with survivors, and even those were falling apart. His proud warrior culture had been reduced to running and hiding, something that burned in his chest worse than any physical wound. "Sir, the Mindari refugees are requesting more medical supplies," reported his aide, a young officer whose clan markings had been burned away in the last battle. "Their telepathic injuries aren't healing." "Tell them we're running low ourselves," Veltar growled. "Everyone's running low on everything." Through the viewport, he could see other refugee ships floating in the asteroid field they were using as a temporary base, Zephyrian crystal ships that no longer glowed with their inner light, Aquarian vessels leaking the special fluid their crews needed to breathe. Dozens of species, all reduced to begging for scraps in the darkness between stars. "Commander, we're getting another transmission from the human sectors," his communications officer announced. "Same as always, complete silence." Veltar's fists clenched. "The humans know we're here. Their long-range sensors are better than ours. They've seen what's happening to the galaxy, and they do nothing." He had tried reasoning with them. He had sent diplomatic messages explaining the situation, offering trade agreements, even promising to share Thoraxian military technology. The humans had ignored every single transmission. Their ships had been spotted near several battle zones, but they always disappeared before anyone could make contact. "Cowards," Veltar spat, loud enough for his entire bridge crew to hear. "They have faster-than-light travel that's better than ours. They have shield technology that could make a difference, but they hide behind their little border while the rest of us die." What Commander Veltar didn't know was that at that very moment, Major Han was walking through the crowded corridors of Kepler Station, wearing the simple robes of a human trade delegate. The station was a neutral meeting point where different species conducted business, and it was currently overflowing with refugees. Han's fake identification papers listed him as a buyer interested in exotic alien art, but his real mission was much more important. "Dr. Yithran?" Han approached a tall, blue-skinned alien who was sitting alone in the station's cantina, staring at a half-empty cup of something that glowed softly in the dim light. The alien looked up with large, sad eyes. "I am Yithran, though I'm not sure doctor means much anymore. My entire research facility was consumed 3 days ago." Han sat down across from him, keeping his voice low. "I represent certain interests that value your work on quantum disruption theory. We'd like to offer you a position with the humans." Yithran's eyes widened. "But I thought your people weren't accepting refugees." "This isn't about refugees," Han said carefully. "This is about your research. We need your expertise to develop new weapon systems." Yithran leaned forward. "You're building weapons to fight the Devourers." "I can't discuss details here," Han whispered. "But if you're interested, there's a supply shuttle leaving for human space in 6 hours. Bay 94. Bring only what you can carry." The alien scientist stared at him for a long moment. "You've been planning this, haven't you?" While everyone thinks you're hiding, you're actually preparing. Han stood up, leaving payment for his untouched drink. 6 hours, Doctor, don't be late. Meanwhile, thousands of light years away, Sergeant Lee crouched in the cramped observation post, hidden inside a dead asteroid. The post was barely large, enough for 2 people, and Lee had been alone here for 6 weeks, watching and recording everything the Devourers did. Day 43 of observation, he spoke quietly into his recorder. The hive ships are following a predictable pattern. They consume rocky planets first, then gas giants, and finally the star itself. The process takes roughly 72 hours per system. Through his high-powered telescope, Lee watched one of the massive bioships extending feeding tendrils toward a planet. The tendrils, each one several miles wide, wrapped around the world like a spider capturing prey. Within hours, the planet would be gone, converted into raw material for the ship's growth. Interesting detail, Lee continued. During the feeding process, the ship's defensive systems appear to shut down for approximately 20 minutes. They're completely focused on consumption and vulnerable to attack during this window. His observations had revealed other weaknesses too. The ships communicated through bioelectrical signals that could potentially be jammed. Their outer hulls grew thicker after each feeding, but there were always small gaps where new growth met old. Most importantly, the ships seemed to have a hierarchy. Smaller vessels always deferred to larger ones. Lee carefully encrypted his data and sent it through a hidden relay network back to Earth. He knew his information was being studied by the best military minds humanity had to offer. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, Commander Na stood in front of a massive holographic display showing the entire galaxy. Red zones marked areas consumed by the Devourers. Yellow zones showed refugee concentrations, and small green dots indicated the locations of hidden human assets scattered across space. Report from Observation Post 7 confirms the feeding cycle pattern. Na announced to the room full of analysts and strategists. Sergeant Lee's data matches what we've seen from other posts. The underground facility was a marvel of human engineering, carved directly into the mountain and shielded from all forms of detection. Hundreds of the Earth's best and brightest worked here around the clock, analyzing alien technology, developing new weapons and planning for the war that was coming. "What about our extraction operations?" asked Colonel Park, Na's second-in-command. "Major Han successfully made contact with Dr. Yithran," Na replied. "The doctor should be arriving at Luna base within the week. We've also extracted 3 other key researchers and a Zephyrian engineer who understands their crystal technology." Na turned to address the entire room. "Everyone thinks we're cowards, hiding while the galaxy burns. Let them think that. While they fight and die in hopeless battles, we're learning. We're preparing, and when the time comes, we'll be ready." The galaxy saw human silence as abandonment, but they couldn't see the truth. Humanity was watching, waiting, and preparing for a war unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Devourer. Advance fleet moved through space like a plague of metal and flesh. 3 massive hive ships, each the size of a small moon, drifted toward the edge of human territory with the confidence of predators who had never known defeat. Behind them followed dozens of smaller bio-vessels, their living hulls pulsing with dark energy as they searched for their next meal. For 6 months, these creatures had swept across the galaxy like wildfire. Every species they encountered had tried the same tactics: massive fleet battles, heroic last stands, desperate charges against impossible odds. Every species had failed. The Devourers had grown stronger with each victory, their ships literally feeding on the wreckage of their enemies. Now they approached human space, expecting nothing more than another easy conquest. Intelligence gathered from consumed alien databases suggested that humans were a young species with limited military experience. Their technology was decent, but nothing special. Most importantly, they had shown no willingness to fight, remaining silent while the galaxy burned around them. The lead hive ship, a grotesque creature of biometal and living tissue, extended its sensor tendrils toward the nearest human outpost. The readings showed exactly what they expected: a small mining station with minimal defenses, populated by a few thousand humans who probably didn't even know death was coming for them. But the Devourers had made a critical mistake. They had never faced an enemy that preferred to strike from the shadows. Lieutenant Wu floated in the cramped cockpit of his stealth frigate, watching the enemy fleet through his passive sensors. The Silent Arrow was humanity's newest design, a ship built for one purpose only. It could hide from almost any detection system, strike fast, and disappear before the enemy knew what hit them. Range to target? Wu asked his pilot, Ensign. Cho, 2,000 kilometers and closing, Cho replied, her hands steady on the controls despite the magnitude of what they were about to attempt. The scout ship is maintaining position just like our intelligence predicted. Wu studied the tactical display. The Devourer scout ship was smaller than the Hive ships, but still massive by human standards. More importantly, it was the communication hub for the entire advance fleet. Take it out and the other ships would be blind and deaf for precious minutes. Weapons status, he asked. Quantum torpedoes armed and ready, reported weapons officer. Kim, we've got 6 shots before we need to reload. Remember, Wu said calmly, we hit hard, we hit fast, and we get out. This isn't about destroying them. It's about sending a message. The Silent Arrow emerged from behind the asteroid field, like a ghost materializing from the void. For a few seconds, the Devourer scout ship didn't even register the threat. Its biosensors were designed to detect large enemy fleets, not a single small vessel, approaching from an unexpected angle. Target their communication node, Wu ordered, his voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through his veins. Make it clean. The quantum torpedoes launched in perfect sequence, their exotic energy signatures almost invisible against the background radiation of space. They struck the scout ship's communication array with surgical precision, the explosions tearing through biometal and disrupting the creature's nervous system. The scout ship convulsed like a wounded animal, its hull rippling as pain signals raced through its living structure. But before it could send a distress call or even identify its attacker, the Silent Arrow was already gone, vanishing back into the asteroid field where its stealth systems made it effectively invisible. Clean hit, Kim reported with satisfaction. Their communications are down and they're showing signs of neurological damage. Time to target area, Wu asked. 14 minutes until the main fleet investigates, Cho replied. We'll be long gone by then. This was the first time in 6 months of war that any species had successfully attacked a Devourer ship and escaped to tell about it. But it was only the beginning. Light years away on the refugee vessel, Last Hope, Captain Zindar was staring at his communications console in disbelief. The message had come through on emergency frequencies, transmitted by a damaged Thoraxian patrol ship that had witnessed something impossible. Read it again, he demanded, his tentacles twitching with nervous energy. His communications officer cleared her throat. A human vessel successfully attacked a Devourer scout ship in the Kepler system. The enemy ship was disabled, and the human vessel escaped without casualties. This is the first confirmed successful strike against Devourer forces by any species. Zindar's crew exchanged shocked glances. For months they had watched in growing despair as the mighty civilizations of the galaxy fell one by one to the Devourers. The humans had been silent throughout the entire crisis, leading many to assume they were either too primitive to help or too cowardly to try. Humans? Gasped his navigator. But they've been silent for months. We thought they were hiding under Titan Station. Communications Officer Mi had been monitoring human frequencies for weeks, trying to understand why Earth remained quiet while the galaxy died. Unlike the aliens, she was starting to see a pattern in the seemingly random signals. She intercepted. Not silent, Mi corrected as she studied the data streams flowing across her screens. Watching, learning, and now acting. The reports began flooding in over the next few days, human ships appearing wherever Devourer forces were spread thin, striking with precision and vanishing before retaliation could arrive. They rescued civilian transports trapped behind enemy lines. They hit supply convoys moving between Hive ships. They planted explosives on feeding stations and disappeared into the void. Each action was small, almost insignificant when measured against the vast scale of the Devourer invasion. But together, they painted a picture that sent chills through both alien refugees and enemy forces alike. The humans weren't fighting like any other species. They weren't interested in glorious battles or honorable defeats. They were fighting to win, and they were very good at it. Admiral Park stood on the bridge of his command ship, the New Soul, studying the tactical display that showed devourer movements across 3 sectors. Each red dot represented an enemy vessel. Each blue dot a human strike team carrying out surgical attacks against the invaders. "Status report," he requested from his operations officer. 17 successful strikes in the past 72 hours, Lieutenant Bay reported. 0 casualties on our side. Enemy communication networks are showing increasing signs of confusion and paranoia. Park nodded with satisfaction. The Devourers had spent 6 months getting used to predictable enemies who fought with honor and lost with dignity. Now they were facing something completely different. An enemy that struck from shadows, fought without rules, and seemed to understand their weaknesses better than they understood themselves. "Signal all strike teams," Park ordered. Phase 1 is complete. Begin Phase 2 operations. The real war was just beginning, and humanity intended to fight it on their own terms. The siege of Arcturus Prime was supposed to be the end of everything. The massive star system, home to over 30 billion beings from 12 different species, had become the last major stronghold against the Devourer advance. If it fell, there would be nowhere left to run. 3 enormous hive ships surrounded the system like hungry predators circling wounded prey. Each biovessel was the size of a small moon, their living hulls pulsing with dark energy as they prepared. For the final assault. They had done this dance dozens of times before. Surround a system, wear down the defenses, then move in for the feast. The alien defenders had prepared for a traditional battle. Thoraxian heavy cruisers formed defensive lines around the main planets. Zephyrian crystal ships charged their energy weapons to maximum power. Mindari vessels coordinated through their telepathic networks, sharing targeting data at the speed of thought. It was an impressive sight, thousands of ships from different species working together in humanity's first joint operation, but Colonel Jun had very different plans. "Listen up," he told his boarding team as they suited up in the cramped transport ship. "Everyone else out there is thinking like this is some kind of honor duel. They want to line up ship to ship and trade shots until somebody wins. Sergeant," Park checked his equipment pack, making sure the viral data cores were secure. "And we're not doing that?" "Hell no," Jun replied with a grim smile. "We're not here to fight fair. We're here to win." The human approach was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. While alien fleets prepared for massive space battles, small human teams were already infiltrating the outer edges of the Devourer formation. They didn't carry heavy weapons or explosive charges. Instead, they carried something far more dangerous: computer viruses designed specifically for living technology. "Remember," Jun whispered into his comm as his team approached, "the first hive ship, these things are part machine, part animal. Their nervous systems run on bioelectrical impulses that we can hack just like any other computer network." The boarding operation itself was a masterpiece of stealth and timing. While the aliens created massive diversions with their fleet movements, human infiltration teams slipped through gaps in the hive ship's defenses. They didn't try to fight their way in with guns blazing. Instead, they found maintenance ports, waste disposal units, and sensor clusters, weak points that no other species had thought to exploit. "Team Alpha is inside the primary ship," reported. Lieutenant Song through the encrypted channel. "Beginning virus deployment now." The viral programs were Dr. Ree's masterwork. Working from her laboratory ship hidden in the asteroid belt, she had spent months studying captured Devourer biotechnology. What she discovered changed everything humanity thought they knew about their enemy. "The individual ships aren't really separate entities," she explained to the Joint Command through a secure hologram link. "They're all connected through a hive mind frequency. Each ship is like a finger on a hand. They all respond to the same central nervous system." Commander Veltar of the Thoraxian fleet shook his head in confusion. "So we destroy the central ship and the others fall?" "It's not that simple," Dr. Ree continued. "The hive mind is distributed across all the ships. But here's the interesting part. If we can introduce chaos into their collective consciousness, they'll start receiving conflicting signals. Imagine if your left hand suddenly decided it wanted to strangle your right hand. The virus deployment began as human teams reached the bio-neural centers of each hive ship. The programs were designed to be subtle at first, introducing small errors into the creature's collective decision-making process. One ship would receive orders to move left, while another got commands to move right. Targeting systems would lock onto friendly vessels instead of enemies. Communication networks would start broadcasting gibberish. Captain Yelshan of the Mindari fleet watched in growing amazement as the human plan unfolded. His telepathic abilities let him sense the confusion spreading through the devourer hive mind, like a cancer. "By the void," he whispered to his crew. "They're not just fighting them, they're driving them insane." The effect was subtle at first. The Lid hive ship began making small navigation errors, drifting slightly off course as conflicting signals confused its biomechanical brain. The second ship started targeting its own escort vessels, apparently mistaking them for enemy craft. The third ship simply stopped moving entirely, its massive bulk floating dead in space as its nervous system crashed and rebooted repeatedly. "This is wrong," muttered Captain Zindar from his command ship. "War should have honor, rules. This is like poisoning someone's mind." But Admiral Park, coordinating the human forces from his flagship, felt no such qualms. "War isn't about honor," he replied over the open command channel. "It's about survival, and right now our survival depends on stopping these things before they eat the entire galaxy." The psychological warfare component was perhaps the most disturbing aspect of the human strategy. As the virus spread through the hive mind, the devourer, ships began exhibiting behavior that the aliens found deeply unsettling. They would start feeding operations and then suddenly stop. They would attack their own escort vessels. Some ships even began retreating from battles they were clearly winning. "They fight like they have no souls to lose," Captain Yelshan observed grimly, as he watched a human strike team board another enemy vessel. "They use the enemy's own nature against them. It's brilliant and terrifying at the same time." Dr. Ree monitored the virus's progress from her hidden laboratory. "The hive mind is fracturing," she reported to Brigadier General Bow, who was coordinating the final phase of the operation. "Each ship is starting to act independently, but they're still receiving fragments of the collective signal. It's like trying to follow directions from 12 different people at once." The battle for Arcturus Prime lasted 18 hours. When it ended, something unprecedented had happened. The devourer forces were retreating. For the first time since the war began, the seemingly unstoppable enemy was running away from a fight. The alien commanders gathered on Admiral Park's flagship after the victory, their expressions a mixture of gratitude and unease. They had been saved, but the methods used to save them raised uncomfortable questions. "You won," said Commander Veltar slowly. "But the way you fought, it was unlike anything we've ever seen." Park nodded calmly. "Sometimes survival requires doing things that others won't. The Devourers have been winning because everyone fights them the same way. We decided to fight differently. As the alien fleets began celebrating their first victory, the human ships quietly withdrew to the system's edge. They had saved Arcturus Prime, but their allies weren't entirely sure if they should be grateful or terrified of their new protectors. The edge of the galactic core was where everything would be decided. Here, where ancient stars burned bright and space itself seemed to pulse with raw energy, the final confrontation between the galaxy's survivors and the Devourer home fleet was about to begin. It was the largest gathering of ships in galactic history. Every species that still drew breath had sent whatever vessels they could spare. Thoraxian battlecruisers floated beside Zephyrian crystal ships. Mindari telepathic vessels shared space with Aquarian bio-frigates. Hundreds of different designs, technologies and fighting philosophies, all united by a single desperate purpose: to stop the Devourers once and for all. At the center of this massive fleet was the human flagship Determination, a sleek vessel that looked small compared to the alien dreadnoughts around it, but packed weapons technology that had been refined through months of brutal combat experience. Admiral Yun stood on the bridge, studying the tactical display that showed the enemy formation ahead. 300 Devourer ships hung in space like a cancer, their biomechanical hulls pulsing with dark energy. At their center was the largest hive ship anyone had ever seen, a creature so massive it had its own gravitational field, pulling asteroids and space debris into its constantly growing mass. "Fleet status report," Yun requested from his operations officer. "All Allied vessels report ready for combat," Lieutenant Kang replied. "Combined fleet strength is just over 4,000 ships. Enemy numbers are approximately 300, but their individual vessels are significantly larger than ours." Yun nodded grimly. On paper, the Allies had numerical superiority. In reality, each Devourer hive ship could probably take on a dozen conventional vessels and win. This wouldn't be a battle won through superior numbers or firepower. It would come down to who was willing to pay the higher price. "Open a channel to all Allied vessels," Yun ordered. When the communication link activated, his voice reached every bridge in the massive fleet. "All vessels, this is Admiral Yun aboard the Determination. In a few minutes, we're going to face an enemy that has consumed half the galaxy. They think they're unstoppable because every species they've faced has fought by the same rules. Today we show them what happens when someone decides the rules don't matter." He paused, looking out at the stars beyond. "Remember, we didn't come this far to lose now. We came here to win, whatever the cost." The battle began like a thunderstorm in space. Thousands of energy beams, missiles, and exotic weapons lit up the darkness as both fleets closed to combat range. The alien vessels fought with desperate courage, their crews knowing this was the last chance for their civilizations to survive. But the Devourers had learned from their previous encounters. Their bioships adapted to each new weapon type within minutes, growing stronger armor where they were hit most often. Their hive mind coordination allowed them to respond to threats with perfect efficiency. Slowly but steadily, Allied ships began falling to the superior enemy firepower. "We're losing too many vessels," reported Commander Veltar from his Thoraxian cruiser. "Their adaptation rate is too fast. Every time we find a weakness, they close it." That's when Captain Min made the decision that would change everything. "All hands, this is the captain." His voice echoed through the corridors of the destroyer Defiance. "We've been ordered to break through their line and target the command vessel. I won't lie to you. This is a one-way mission. Anyone who wants to transfer to another ship has 30 seconds. Nobody moved from their stations." "Sir, you'll never make it out," his communications officer warned, as the Defiance broke formation and accelerated toward the massive enemy command ship. Min's hands moved steadily across his control panel, arming the ship's self-destruct system. "Not the point, Lieutenant. Sometimes winning isn't about getting home alive." The Defiance screamed through space at maximum velocity. Its engines pushed far beyond safe limits. Enemy bioplasma cannons tore chunks from its hull, but the ship kept coming. Min waited until the last possible second, until his vessel was so close to the command ship that the explosion would cause maximum damage. "For Earth," he said quietly, and pressed the detonation button. The explosion lit up space like a new star being born. The Defiance died, but its sacrifice tore a massive hole in the command vessel's side, exposing its vital bio-neural centers to the vacuum of space. Across the battlefield, other human crews watched their comrade's sacrifice and understood what needed to be done. Captain Lee's frigate Soul's Pride followed the same path, ramming into another hive ship's weapon clusters. Commander Park's cruiser, Iron Will, detonated itself inside a bioship's feeding mouth, the explosion ripping through its digestive systems. The alien commanders watched in growing horror and amazement as human ship after human ship made the ultimate sacrifice. These weren't desperate last stands or heroic gestures. They were calculated decisions made by crews who understood that individual survival was less important than species survival. "By the void," whispered Captain Yelshan of the Mindari fleet. "They're not just willing to die, they're choosing to die. There's a difference." The Devourer hive mind, evolved over millions of years to prioritize self-preservation above all else, simply couldn't process what it was seeing. Every other species they had faced fought to preserve their individual lives, their ships, their crews. The humans fought as if death was just another tool to be used when necessary. The psychological shock of facing an enemy that treated sacrifice as strategy began to fracture the hive mind's coordination. Ships that had operated in perfect harmony for centuries started hesitating, second-guessing orders, pulling back from engagements they could have won. Their formation is breaking apart, Dr. Ree reported from her analysis station. The hive mind is experiencing something like panic. They can't understand why we're willing to die to hurt them. When the massive command vessel finally succumbed to its injuries and began breaking apart, the remaining Devourer ships lost all coordination. Some fled toward the galactic rim. Others simply shut down, their biomechanical brains unable to function without the central guidance they had relied on for so long. The battle was over. The galaxy was saved. In the aftermath, the surviving alien commanders gathered aboard the Determination. They looked at Admiral Yun with expressions that mixed gratitude with something approaching fear. "You fought like demons," said Admiral Kethra, his crystalline form reflecting the distant stars. "No, worse than demons. Demons fight for evil. Purposes, you fought like forces of nature, unstoppable, terrifying." Yun stood quietly for a moment, looking out at the debris field that marked humanity's victory and the price they had paid for it. Over 200 human ships had been lost in the final assault, along with their crews, but the galaxy lived. "We fought like humans," he replied simply. "Sometimes that's what survival requires." The galaxy was free, but it would never be the same. They owed their continued existence to a species that had shown them a truth too terrible to ignore. Sometimes the price of survival is the willingness to pay any price at all, even the ultimate one.